Thank you so much for buying my fee calculator. I built this tool because I know exactly what a pain in the backside it can be setting fees. This is just a quick tutorial to talk you through how to use the tool, so let's get into it. So you'll start at this front start tab. You can see there's 5 sections to it. So you have your setup, your phases, your resourcing, the summary, and then a little bit of framing at the end, which I'll touch on. You can start here, or you can just work through the tabs. There's also the ability to start a new session, which will revert to original settings. You can save the session, which I really recommend. It saves as a .json file, which you can save into a project folder if you like. You can then also load it into this calculator for future if you ever want to. A little bit of housekeeping. This auto saves to your browser unless for some reason you're working in an incognito file, or if you clear the cache, then it will delete whatever you've been working on live. But you can always load that file as long as you've saved it. So something to keep in mind. A little bit of a disclaimer, this is obviously not financial advice. You should really sanity check any numbers or percentages that I reference in here based off what you know, where you're located, what sector you work in. There's a lot of variables. So I've based this on my experience in Australia and what I understand of sort of current industry benchmarks. So make sure that you keep that in mind when you work through it. So let's get into it. So project setup is pretty self-explanatory. You can click through and fill in all of these project details however you like. You can customize to your currency, so you can just add that in there. Construction value, if you know it, is really, really handy. We often reference back or benchmark percentages of design fees back to a percentage of construction value. So if you know it, great. If you have an estimate, that's fine. If you don't know it, that's okay too, but it can be really helpful. So we're just going to throw a number in here as a bit of an example just to help as we work through the calculator. It's worth just touching a little bit on this default rate just so you have some context. I would recommend you do use this as your base rate. This is not the hourly rate that you're probably putting in front of clients at the moment. This is your base rate. What's the minimum sort of cost that it takes you to run your business? If you have a team of designers, then this would be your average across that team. Then you have this overhead multiplier. So this is, what is that figure that you need to manage your software and your admin and all of those overheads to make sure that you're accounting for that. If you don't know what this is, or you're not comfortable, but you do know that you have an hourly rate that already accounts for all of that, that's fine. You can just change this overhead multiplier to 1, and then whatever your hourly rate is, just update that accordingly, but we'll just revert this back to what it was. And then obviously contingency, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. You can just adjust that to whatever you like. Okay, let's get into it. Let's set some phases. So this little preamble at the start is really just about helping you more quickly kind of start with a baseline fee. So these percentages that I've dropped in here are based on current Australian ballpark residential rates. Commercial will probably sit a little bit lower just because of they're usually a bigger scale of project. You can put in your own preferred percentage here if you like, but you can see if we click through how this adjusts. So let's assume we're going with the mid. You want to say user's proposed fee, and you can see that's popped a middle range number in this box down here. Now you can adjust this however you like manually. If you didn't know your construction estimate at the start, that's fine. This is just where you would just put in a manual number here. You wouldn't bother with any of those percentages. Then we want to auto allocate, yes we do, across the phases based on this proposed fee figure. And this is really just taking some industry assumed splits across phases that are auto-populated into this calculator, but you can adjust this however you like. So you can use the slider, you can adjust the numbers manually, however you like. You can delete phases, you can add phases. So this is all completely customizable, but what this starts to do is give you your absolute baseline, a feel for the hours, and what this project is going to cost you, plus your overheads, which you can see in this section here. So based on all of this, it gives you, and this obviously then includes your contingency as well. So this is what this project is going to cost you to deliver before you add any profit margin in. This means you now know what you've got to play with in terms of fee negotiation if it ever comes to that point. Then we go to resourcing. If you're a solo operator, you can just ignore this bit. So if you have a team of designers that you want to start to account for from a resourcing perspective, you'll have seen this is just automatically pulled in some assumed numbers, but like everything, you can manually adjust this however you like. You can revert it back to where it was. This tab allows you to visualize those fees based on cost or hours. That's just a neat little visual tool. And you can add or delete resources as much as you like. And then if we go to the summary, this is where you start to sort of see where you've landed with your fee. So again, you can adjust this. So this is based on those baseline figures. This is where you can start adding in your margin. So this is where the fun bit begins. So let's say we increase this to 75,000. You can see you're sitting at about 8% margin, which is still pretty slim. And the higher you go, the more buffer you've got. So this really allows you to start understanding what this project will cost you to deliver it, including overheads, including contingency, and then you can add in your profit. So this is really powerful. This is where you are in control of your numbers. You've got a summary down here, and this also starts to give you your actual effective hourly rate. So this is closer to what you would be presenting to clients if you needed to present an hourly rate. You can add any project notes in this box down here, and that will show up when you say export to PDF. So you can see this will open in a new tab, which usefully has cut off on this view, but this will give you the summary and you just save as PDF. I'll just pop back to the calculator. And then lastly, just on the framing, this is your storytelling. So often you will need to present your fees as deliverables and hours. That's not unusual, but you want to make sure that you're still framing the story relevant to the client in front of you and relevant to the project. I've included 5 sort of storytelling or narrative options here. It's about capturing your value to the client in front of you. There's lots of other ways that you can do this, but I want to make sure that you don't forget about this bit, because this is the important part of the sale. The numbers are the science, but the story is what sells you. Thank you so much. Any questions, please drop me a note. I read everything that comes through, and thanks again.